Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, let's discuss the Python nodes required for QA automation engineer or an SDET engineer thoroughly. Okay, if you want this PDF, I have given a link in the description and also in the comment section. Please do check out. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get started with the table of contents on what exactly we are going to discuss. In the initial section, we are going to discuss about the introduction to Python. What is a Python? What's the history and evolution of the Python? What are the features and advantages of Python? What are the real world applications of Python? How to install Python and setting up the environment? How about running the Python scripts in interactive mode and script mode? And understanding the Python's REPL, writing and executing a simple Python program. Okay, and in the next section we are going to discuss about the Python very basics. Okay, here we are going to discuss Python syntax and indentation rules, variables and constants, data types in Python, typecasting and type checking, taking user input, printing the output, and comments in Python. Okay, and in the third section we are going to discuss about the operators and expressions. Okay, so the different types of operators like arithmetic operators, comparison operators, logical operators, bitwise operators, assignment operators, identity operators, membership operators, operator precedence, and associativity. Okay, and in the next section we are going to discuss the control flow statements. Okay, so here we are going to discuss about the topics like conditional statements and about the looping in Python and about the nested loops and about the loop control statements. Okay, and in the fifth section we are going to discuss about the data structures in Python. That's about lists, about tuples, about sets, about dictionaries, about the strings, and about the functions. Okay, and in the seventh section we are going to discuss about the Python modules. Okay, and in the eighth section we are going to discuss about the file handling. In the ninth section we are going to discuss about the exception handling. In the 10th section we are going to discuss about the object oriented programming concepts. In the 11th section we are going to discuss about the Python libraries overview. Okay, and in the 12th section we have discussed about the working with APIs, and in the 13th section we have discussed about the web development with Python. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, initially we will get started with the introduction with Python. What is a Python? Okay, I'll discuss at very high level, guys, on what are the topics we have covered. I'll not go in depth. Okay, since everything is covered in notes, please do check out if you really need. Okay, and in the next section we have discussed about the history and evolution of Python and the difference between Python 2 versus Python 3 and features and advantages of Python, about the real world applications usage of Python, and about the installing Python and setting up the environment, about running the scripts, Python scripts in interactive mode and script mode, and about understanding the Python's read eval print loop, and about writing and executing a simple Python first program. And in the next section we have talked about the Python basics related to the Python syntax and indentation rules. And in the next section we have discussed about the variables and constants. And in the next section, we have discussed about the data types in Python. We have talked about the numeric type, text type, sequence type. Under sequence, again list, tuple, range, and then about the set types and about the mapping type. Okay, and in the next section, we have talked about the typecasting and type checking. Okay, and in the next section, next topic, we have discussed about the taking user input using input function. Okay, and then output, that's a print function. And then we have talked about the comments in Python. Okay, single line comments and multi-line comments. And then we have talked about the operators and expressions. Okay, we have talked about the arithmetic operators. We have talked about the comparison operators. We have talked about the logical operators. We have talked about the bitwise operators. And we have talked about the assignment operators. And we have talked about the identity operators. And we have talked about the membership operators. Okay, and in the next topic, we have discussed about the operator precedence and associativity. And in the next topic, we have discussed on the control flow statements in Python. That's conditional statements like if statement, if else statement, if else statement. Okay, and about looping in Python, we have talked about the for loop, while loop, and we have talked about the nested loops. And in the next section, we have talked about the loop control statements, break statement, continue statement, pass statement. Okay, and in the next section, we have talked about the data structures in Python. Okay, we have talked about the lists. We have talked about the tuples. And then we have talked about the sets. And then we have talked about the dictionaries. And then we have talked about the strings. And then we have talked about the functions in Python. Okay, you can see there are many functions. You can explore more. We have talked about how to return in the value from functions. We have talked about the scope and lifetime of variables. We have talked about the keywords, and we have talked about the recursive functions. And we have talked about the anonymous functions, that's the lambda functions. Okay, and the types of lambda functions. We have talked about the modules in Python, on how to import the modules, how to use them using alias. Okay, and we have talked about creating and using custom modules. We have talked about the standard library modules. And then we have talked about the sys module and command line arguments. Okay, and we have talked about on how to use pip to install external modules. And in the next topic, we have discussed about the file handling in Python, how to open and close the files. how to read and write the files, write into a file. Okay, and we have talked about the different types of file modes, and also we have talked about on how to work with CSV files, and we have talked about handling JSON data, and we have talked about uh, handling the JSON data, like writing the JSON data, reading the JSON data, converting Python dictionary to JSON string, converting JSON string to Python dictionary, and many other topics. Okay, and in the next section we have talked about the exception handling in Python. Initially we have talked about understanding the errors in Python and what are some of the common built-in exceptions, and then we have talked about how to use try and except blocks, and then we have talked about handling multiple exceptions, and then we have talked about the finally blocks, and we have talked about raising a custom exceptions using raise keyword. Okay, in the next section we have talked about the object oriented programming concepts in Python. Okay, we have talked about the classes and objects, on how to create a class and how to create an object. Okay, and we have talked about the instance and class variables, and we have talked about the inheritance and types of inheritance, and we have talked about the method overriding and polymorphism, and we have talked about the encapsulation and abstraction process, and then we have talked about the magical methods, and we have talked about the Python libraries. Okay, about the NumPy, about the pandas, okay, and about the data visualization, and about the machine learning, and about the web scraping, okay, and about the automation, and how to work with databases, and how to work with RDBMS. Okay, it's nothing but a database, guys. Okay, and then how to work with APIs in Python. Okay, so this is completely a next section on how to understand the RESTful services, how to make the HTTP requests, how to send a post request, and we have talked about how to parse the JSON data, how to work with public APIs, and then we have talked about a sample web development with Python. Okay, so this comes to the end of the document, guys. So if you have any queries or questions, please drop a comment in the comment section or drop me an email and let me know if you have any queries or questions. If you need this PDF, I have given a link in the description and also in the comment section. Please do check out. It's really helpful for interviews and for performing a quick revision. So thank you so much for watching my video. All the best for your upcoming interviews. Happy learning, happy testing.